Happy New Year! I cannot believe we're in 2020, but we made it. Yay! It's really an exciting day for me, and thank you so much for joining me. Peachy Fruit, I just thought that this might be a video that might resonate with you. So I want to start at the very beginning in the idea of how did I start having this experience that actually just happened yesterday. About clarifying more about the starseed fairies and the elves, and just giving us more clarity on where fairies went to and what fairies were on Earth and all the different types of fae. So I'm going to begin with a little bit of facts because I think it's really important to talk about the actual idea of Electra, the star of the Pleiades. She is one of the 7 stars, so one of the 7 sisters. And it says here that Electra was a Pleiad, which basically is like a water nymph, but also was one of the nymphs of Artemis. And so the Pleiades muse, basically, are the 7 sisters. They could go through forests and oceans, and so they have this flexibility to them where they can be both on land as well as in water. And so they are known as just the nymphs, ethereal type of beings that are humanoid, but they vibrate at a very high frequency that it's hard for those that are at a lower frequency in their life in terms of their lower states of consciousness. They don't believe in some of the higher vibrational ideas about Earth. And so they lower their vibration. They're not able to really connect to these creatures and see them unless the creatures, these ethereal beings, want to be seen for a particular reason to help a particular soul. So the Pleiades were basically these beings in the myth, the Greek myth, that roamed around the forest, and they were also daughters of an Oceanid, which is like a water goddess, and Atlas that holds up the earth. So a Titan plus a water goddess makes the Pleiades. And so what's interesting is that I just found this information today because I had this idea that I knew about the 7 sisters, but I wasn't really like honing into the detail about the star system. And so I finally looked into Electra today, and it makes complete sense when I tell you basically my experience and what's going on right now. So Electra is one of the Pleiades, or 7 sisters, a group of stars on the shoulder of the bull, the Taurus constellation. And this star is clearly visible to the naked eye, yet Electra is the missing Pleiad. So she is the one that's basically the missing of the Pleiades. And there's also another Pleiad, Merope, who is often considered the lost sister. So Electra is one of the missing sisters, and then Merope is also considered that. And this is interesting here because the legend is that Zeus fathered her son, Electra's son, Dardanus, founder of Troy. And this star is clearly visible to the naked eye, yet Electra is the missing Pleiad who withdrew her light in sorrow at the destruction of Lilium, the house of Dardanus. Electra, they say, left her sisters and took a place in the Arctic Circle. That is why they sing, in Troy's last hour, Electra shrouded her form in mist and cloud and left the Pleiadian band. Still rises up their bright troop in the skies, but she alone hides, viewless ever since the town of her son, Dardanus, in ruin fell. Electra had another son, Jason, and a third, Samothrice, but more frequently, this third child is named as Harmonia. That's really an interesting connection, because Tolkien was very into the idea of harmony, that the elves represented harmony. There were these beings that represented harmony. So Electra, although for at least 2 or 3 centuries, the title of a clearly visible star has been regarded as the lost Pleiadian, which is basically the other sister that was lost, like Merope is often considered as well, from the legend that she withdrew her light in sorrow at witnessing the destruction on Earth. And that is really, really interesting, because it's kind of how we understand what happened to fairies. That those that study fairies and been interested in them and researching them, there's something that we all kind of come to the same understanding, is that the fairies withdrew from the earth because humans came and they forgotten nature. They forgot their connection to nature, and they were looking at this earth and they were seeing that their time was over, that a time of being completely connected to nature, because they started to be just unable to communicate to humans. And just, it's like when you are at a higher level of consciousness, it's hard to communicate to those that may be at a lower level of consciousness. So quite literally, the fairies, their consciousness became so elevated, they could no longer exist in the 3D earth. They could no longer exist. So what did they do? They basically all died or left their bodies in a way, but because they were at such a high vibrational form, they started to become light bodies. And so what happened was, as you become a light body energetically, you actually can enter into other dimensions, other realities that do not play to the same laws of physics as this earth does. So the fairies withdrew their light from the earth because humans were not connecting to them. And they were, I think that fairies in a lot of ways were persecuted, especially when the religions came into existence. I believe that there has been some connection, because when you actually go into the legends and the folk tales, there are tales of knights, and that's why I picked this picture as my thumbnail. There are tales of knights and men in particular, or those in need, and they're in the forest and they're lost, they're wounded, and there has been some legends and sightings that these very ethereal type of women, mainly women, but I will get into that later. Basically, they helped these soldiers that were wounded. And so the whole thing about Seelie fairies and light elves, and I just want to clarify, elves are considered a type of fae. So when I talk about fairies, I'm actually including them. But there is a little bit of a difference. But what happens is, when a being basically becomes a light body, and they elevate so highly that their frequency raises and their vibration raises so much, they levitate. They literally lift off of the ground, and you can't see them anymore, but they are flying. They are flying. That is where the idea of fairies come from. It is because their vibration is so light and high that they're not fixed to the same laws of physics as those that are in the lower dimensions of consciousness. Now, there's a big story here, very big, and they wanted me to let humanity know, and I'm going to definitely go into this more, because I'm going to become a vessel, for this energy, because this energy is trying to come back into the planet, not in a forceful way, but there has been a lot of star seeds that have originated from this dimension around Electra, the star, because Electra, the star, is 115 million years old only. The Pleiades is not a very old constellation. So the Pleiadians, the beings that live around the stars, they're actually not on planets that are right next to the stars. They are in another dimension of space that is centered around those stars. They actually have entered into a different fabric of space, and so it's a portal, and this is why these beings are able to connect to us in a very unique way, because they are light body beings. So you won't see them, they can. Here's how you see fairies. When a fairy decides, they can lower their vibration, and then they become more physical, more opaque, and not so transparent or translucent. A light body essence is one that is like a bodily form, but you can see through it. It's transparent, it's luminescent, it's iridescent. There's lots of colors coming through, depending on what the being is feeling. And so the spectrum of light plays with emotions. It's very interesting about the light body idea. So fairies a lot of times are seen by humans when a human is at that either same vibration they are at that time, or a fairy has decided to lower their vibration so that they can experience Earth in a physical form, or they decide to help an individual and be seen in that moment in the forest to catch a glimpse of them. Just what you would see is basically just like this ethereal looking woman or man just kind of dart across. They're not going to have maybe a conversation with someone, but they might. But that is a moment of them doing that for the benefit of that individual, because in some way it awakens them spiritually. It is what they needed in their life to have this profound spiritual awakening. And a lot of times when people see fairies and they are not asking for it, they're not looking for it in a way, like they're not seekers of it, they're not elevating their own vibration, it is because fairies represent in the collective what we have created, as oneness, as our consciousness has created archetypes together and basically have created energies and understanding so that we can communicate and connect to each other and understand ideas. What we have viewed fairies as is both our helpers and our reminders. So they're the safety key for humans. When humans get to be too low in their vibration, they're really down on themselves, they're really depressed, they're only seeing this 3D construct, this world, fairy energy is there as a safety net. It's a reminder, I guess you can say, that humans have another type of aspect to them. There's a potential of different energies that they can tap into and access. And when you access that fairy energy in your life as a human, you start to vibrate at a very high frequency. And this will catapult you out of the normal human drama that you may experience when you don't have this fairy energy. So what's going on is that the Electra Pleiadian fairies that come in all types of forms, they are like the elves, very humanoid. They could look like the elves, but there's also another type of form. There's gnomes, there are little dwarves, there are little flying fairy type of creatures. They're all existing in that dimension around the star Electra that has become their home. The idea is that they were part of Earth. They were living on Earth as a species, as well, many different species, but as a collective, they were living on Earth. They were part of the Earth construct of basically belonging to the human collective. But because humans started to cut down the forests and they started to act really warlike towards each other and nature, and not replenishing and taking more than what is needed in terms of animals and land and resources, the fairies were like, absolutely, we're not staying on Earth any longer. We cannot. So they made a decision, like Tolkien wrote about, to sail away. They just all moved, and it was a collective shift. And they exist now on another higher dimension outside of this space reality, but on another, in another fabric of space, and through a portal, through a wormhole, you can get to them if we had that technology now. And that is their realm. Because it is in another fabric of space and another dimension, there are laws of physics that are different. It's much it's more of a lighter density there in the land itself. So the land itself, the dimension that they live in, looks like fairyland, you know, here, like what you would experience in fantasy tales and movies. There's a familiarity when people watch those things or they hear stories of it. Those souls that connect to that, it is because you were, your past life was part of that fairy collective that left Earth. And you're here with me. We are here now to help bring in that energy back again. I will say it's not all of us from the Electra portal of the Pleiades, but it is because there's lots of different beings. There's actually other fairy beings in our galaxy, and also in the neighbor galaxy, Andromeda fairies. They also are part of the human collective as well. But many of you that have resonated with me on my channel, and you're like, wow, I really connect to Pleiades, and I also really love the elves and fairies. There is this connection that Tolkien was tapping into. The idea that the fairies and the elves had to leave Earth. They left it alone for humans. Now they're coming back because humans are awakening to this presence of them, but also it's about a nature connection. So many souls have worked really hard to awaken themselves just through a very kind of long and tedious process, or sometimes very fast. It's a spiritual awakening where you just are like, I'm going to take better care of the earth. I'm going to care more about animals. I'm going to take better care of the earth. I see what my fellow human beings are doing. I do not agree with that. And that is because you contain the blueprint. You contain a consciousness block from that dimension of fairy. You contain that. So when you were born as a baby, as you come into the earth and you lowered your vibration, let's just say. You lowered your vibration temporarily so that you can exist in your physical form. And when you did, you exist as holding that consciousness block of fairy within you. You cannot help not loving fantasy, fairy tales, legends, these types of things. They resonate with you because they are at the same level of experience and understanding that you had in past lives. So, very exciting things. I just want to say this is a huge shift in a lot of ways, but weed has been legalized in over 15 states in the United States today. And also, I think they're working on it this year. And this is very big. This is part of the fairy shift in humans. Well, not all humans are going to shift to this, but the fairy energy of being able to have a symbiotic relationship with nature, to be able to use nature as a tool to help heal, remind, and really explore and enjoy the experience of a physical life. This is the gift of nature. And so, because this consciousness shift is happening in the United States and all over, I'm sure it's starting to, medicinal types of plants where it's strictly from nature, you do not do anything to it, you don't add chemicals to it, it is organic, right from nature. That is a gift. It is a safety net. It's a key. It's a way to, if you get too stuck in the 3D world, and if you feel trapped, it's a window. It's a window for you to remember your interconnection to everything in the universe. It's a window to remember a lightheartedness within your soul. I have to be completely honest. I have not been my fairy soul. I have not, well, I have, but not in a way that I think I'm going to start being now. That there has been a huge consciousness shift within me. I think people are going to start feeling it within themselves, because this fairy energy is very, very powerful, but it's subtle. It's very subtle. It's not going to force anything. It's not coming in love bombs, not at all. It's a very soft, glittery type of energy that you can tap into if you seek it out. If you are not a seeker of fairy energy, if you are not interested in it at all, you will not experience that in your life. Like, that's not, that won't be a part of your perception of reality. And that is completely fine. I have to say, I went to a party and I met some amazing souls, and they are just not into fairies. Or they're intrigued and they're interested, but they're not, they just have other interests, and that's completely okay. And as I was talking to them, I just loved them regardless. I was like, wow, you're very different from me. And I absolutely love hearing your perspective on things. It's really fun. When you allow the fairy frequency to enter into your life more, you will become more lighthearted in your life. You will be able to heal from depression. You will be able to remind yourself of the spiritual nature of things. It's a gift. It's basically a safety net. It's like a key, like I said, that the collective has in order for us to remember another aspect of ourselves in our consciousness. And it's really important that humans awaken to it now, because we are in a little bit of a battle. The idea that we have galactic beings, we have other types of souls that are part of a different reality, a different perception of reality. And so what they do is they do not see the fairy energy as being really important to have. It's not logical. It's not going to do anything. They don't see the validity of it. And it is so interesting. And this is why people have kind of pushed out fairies. It has to do with the bloodline of those that have persecuted against the fairies in the past, that caused a lot of them to leave. I will say that the Pleiadians do live under the earth. There is a part of the Pleiadians that are from like Taygeta and other types of star systems. They come from that area as well, but they come from a different dimension. But a lot of the Pleiadians contain this fairy energy. It's just something within them. No matter if they're more warrior-like, they still have this fairy energy. That is the spirit that Tolkien was able to tap into. A warrior for nature, for all that's innocent and good and pure, that does no harm to nature, but very loving and kind and playful. Tolkien remarked that the elves, that Samwise, when he went to Rivendell, he saw the elves as merry as children and as splendid as kings. As terrible as kings, that's right. But terrible is kind of splendid in Old English kind of idea. And that means that these beings are extremely powerful. You don't want to mess with them. Other galactic beings that have met with them because of their technology, because of the laws of physics that they do not have to abide to, they are able to fly around and shoot arrows at them. I mean, they have this ability to them to be warriors for things that others may not see as important or valid. It is a very important part of the human consciousness and the universal collective to have fairies, to have elves. It's extremely important because you need guardians over nature and animals and things that those that do not put those as priority will not see as important. And so that's the fairy energy coming in. Those that have started to transform themselves and they're going through their evolution, and the idea that they're maybe eating less meat and they're working hard on connecting more to nature, being outside more, getting in tune with nature, reading more about elves and fairies. You are a space holder for this energy on Earth. It's incredibly important because the more people that do that, the less chance humanity has about basically forgetting nature in the future. And it's very important because there's a pathway that humans can take. And I said this earlier in my channel, but now I can say it with more conviction because I've gotten true clarity on it. That's the thing about me, is I don't like speaking about something unless I get a really deep clarity. Like, I cannot talk about anything else except this. This is very important. This is very vital. So the idea is that there is a timeline that exists. It's a potential in the reality, and it's happening because there are souls on Earth that are forgetting nature, and they're pursuing technology. And pursuing technology is good, but there needs to be this coexistence with nature, or you destroy the planet. And that's what's happening. The planet is actually being destroyed at the same time technology is being pursued. And so the fairy energy is vital to this change and switch in timeline that makes sure that humans do not evolve into nature disconnected beings. And disconnected beings from nature, you could put your imagination there, but they are the beings that we know as, the grays, or those, and there's different types species of grays, I get it, but these types of grays, the ones that humans do not want to evolve into, their world is just completely full of not steel, but it's a metal that doesn't exist. They use all the resources of Earth up, and then they have this kind of artificial and virtual reality existence. And it's very depressing. It's very sad. It's a dystopian type of future for many souls. There are some souls that love that. They prefer it. My husband does not mind trying to become a cyborg. He is like, hey, I would put a robotic arm on me. That's his path. And it's it's funny how he fell in love with me. We're very different in a lot of ways, but it's cute. It's a good connection because we help balance each other. And that's what this is about. Earth itself is a collective that is trying to reach a type of balance that did not have in the future. There's a timeline that exists, and we are trying to fix that so that we can ensure that humanity does not lose this sense of connection to nature. On the other side of that dystopian, artificial, virtual reality existence, on that other side is one in which we coexist with nature, and it is space cities, a space galactic city, basically around the world, all these beautiful advanced cities, and there's so much greenery and there's so much nature, and it is and nature is completely healthy and abundant, and nature starts to provide a more joyful experience for all souls, because they'll have food, they'll have shelter, they can live in a tree houses, sure. If they don't want a building to live on the ground, that's fine. Trees will start to grow in buildings inside. And then we start to get into using the power and the force of nature. And then we start getting into magical technology or higher advanced technology that looks magical to us, about like bioluminescence, knowing how to harness that and use that as lights instead of electricity. I mean, it gets, let me tell you, the other side of the artificial technology path is one that is so beautiful. It makes me cry. It makes me cry with joy. And I can only tap into this because this is what I have experienced in another lifetime. Many of us, if you resonate with me, many of us that have visions of that type of future, it is because you came from that. You hold a consciousness block within you to bring and harness that on Earth. It's unbelievable. So I guess that's why the Elven Light University is being established. The Elven Spiritual Path organization is being established. There is a foundation that needs to take place to harness the fairy energy in a very real way. That is not about fantasies and imagination and people just laughing at you and thinking, oh, that's cute, oh, that's fun. I like that. That's great cosplay. No, there's something more beyond everybody doing cosplay and loving the fairies and the elves. It is when you get in touch with that, you're loving an aspect of yourself that you have forgotten. And I left a quote on my Instagram account. We are angels and fairies that have forgotten how to fly. Angels is just a word to describe a soul that takes on a volunteer position or an assistance position, a guidance position, just to help remind those that are at the lower stages of spiritual development, like, hey, this is where you can go. And this is why the angels are all involved with like the religious books. And it's because people tap into that energy to provide them spiritual enlightenment in that moment in time. Angels are very real. Angels and fairies actually are the same thing, but angels can come in other forms. Angels can come in the form of frog-like beings. Angels can come in the form of whale-like humanoids. The universe is vast, and it is as vast as the consciousness can expand, and that is infinite. That is infinite. So whatever you can imagine is truly what exists out there. We are in the stages of 2020 where we are going to meet up with these different unique galactic energies. Now, I want to say something very clear for transsexuals, gender bending souls, non-binaries. So there are pathways within that. There are pathways of more utilizing technology and also going towards more the gray path. And there's another pathway of the fairies. The fairies have actually, they have represented this feminine masculine balance. So regardless if you're a female or you're a male, a fairy energy will contain both. Unless they choose, because remember, they're light bodies, so they can create their selves very much like the Ainur, the Valar in Tolkien's world, in the Silmarillion, decided to choose whether to be a female Valar or a male Valar. It's because they decided what energies of nature in the universe to use to compile who they are. So most fairies, a lot of them, but there are some that take on a very masculine form and a very feminine form. But most fairies are ambiguous. They're androgynous. They are, you just don't know. And they contain this element of balance within them. And it is beautiful to see. And you're seeing souls like that on Earth. And a lot of you are part of my audience. I think that's how you found me, because we're part of that. Although I take on more of a feminine identity, I'm very much a female in my identity. I've decided that for myself. I also have a masculine balance that can allow me to kind of, in the nature aspect of what masculinity means, and you can go to some of my videos to see, because I don't go by society gender roles. It's about what nature does and how you can tell what a feminine nature is and a masculine nature is by looking at the nature that exists within men and women that is outside of gender roles. It is about understanding how the feminine energy is kind of this cultivator and the masculine energy is the impregnator. And so it's very important because that's what created this universe. That is the Big Bang coming together, is those energies, a cultivation, a womb, and an impregnation of basically giving the sperm the spark of the divine spark, and then the cultivator. And that's why Mother Earth is normally considered a mother, because Mother Earth, when you get in touch with that energy, it's a womb, it's a cultivator. It holds all its beings in its precious hands, secures you, gives you water, gives you trees. It's absolutely a beautiful energy when you get into it. It's so loving. It's so loving. So those that have maybe not had such a very strong mother relationship with your earth mother, those that maybe didn't even know their earth mother, when you get in touch with nature, it's like a reminder of this energy that you have forgotten or you've never really had. It's a love energy. It's incredibly loving. There's a very incredibly loving masculine energy as well that helps seed Earth. It's like the pollinator and the rain and the seeds that germinate. So there is this nature, masculine and feminine energy that exists in the universe. What we're seeing is this balance coming into many humans. But there is a path of that where it could become more like, the cyborgs that forget about all gender energies. And this is hard to explain, but When someone forgets about the divine masculine and feminine, they're a blank. They're a blank, and society is very boring and dull in many ways, because there's not this give and take. Everybody is the same. It's a hive mind. Then you're all basically robots and you think the same, and life becomes monotonous. And so what the Greys are doing is they are trying, some of the Greys that are abducting humans, they're trying to fix their mistakes, but they're also trying to seed other life. There is a split. There is a schism in the Greys. There is a schism. There's a schism in humanity. There's a schism everywhere, because there are some people that choose a different route than others. So you have Greys that are taking from humans because they want to populate other life forms on other planets. They believe that they can take from humans because they are more advanced, and they've helped seed some humans, and they have been venerated as gods, especially in Egypt and in some of the Southern Americans. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that they were taken to be these advanced beings and then gods as gods. But there are some Greys that have broken off from that, and they don't like what they have become. So there are some Greys that are humanoid that basically are trying to fix this mistake of living in a completely genderless, dystopian, artificial, virtual reality world. And when you exist at a higher dimension, in the idea of like when you get into hyper technology and advancements, go to my video on the 7 main stages that the Pleiadians talk about. There are 7 main stages of a civilization in the idea, or species, basically, that you enter into individually, of course, but there's also a collective way of working on Earth. So what happens is, as you get higher up, you start having more technology available to you. You have hyper technology. You can punch through wormholes with hyper speed and go into another dimension. That's how these beings get to us. That's why we can't see them. There is other fabrics of space that is accessible when you enter into these higher technology, basically just knowledge. And humanity is in the very beginning stages of this hyper technology, very beginning stages. There is a lot. There's a lot to say. It's going to come out more and more, I think, in people. People are going to have more clarity and understanding that we could go towards war and destruction of nature and building bombs that are more powerful technologically, that can devastate the entire planet. Like just one atom bomb can devastate the entire planet. Not yet, but this is happening because they're getting to the God particle, the idea of how to reconstruct matter. There are some scientists that are trying to figure it out, not because they're evil, not because they have ill will. It is because they're curious, and curiosity sometimes kills the cat. And there are some beings that will use that as an advantage because they do not like humans. They do not like humans. And what they want is they want humans. And I won't even say that they want to even keep a select few. Maybe, possibly. But they want the majority of humans gone from this planet so that they can take the Earth. Because Earth is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It is one of those planets that is known as like a golden planet to many beings because of the availability, the potential on it to build. the water, the land. It's not all rocky like Mars and full of sand. This is truly a sacred planet in a lot of ways. So there are beings that are at our same level of dimension that have entered into this planet, and they have disguised themselves as humans, and they have even been underground, and they are waiting patiently until humans destroy themselves. They're not going to do it themselves. They will, okay, so eventually they might get to the point. There might be a battle. There might be a Sauron battle, but we'll see. What they're doing is they're egging on fights between humans. They're starting wars. They're starting conflicts. They're developing technology that we shouldn't mess with yet because our consciousness level is just not there. We're still warring with each other. When you are warring with each other's nations, you should not have advanced technology in your hands. Nobody should have nuclear missiles and nuclear bombs. This is something that has been a complete mistake in the timeline of humanity, and we are trying to alter that. So what is going on is these beings, these negative beings, and you will see them online, they take the form of humans. They mingle in society. They mess and manipulate society. What they are doing is they are waiting until humans destroy themselves. So they will not attack humans, not necessarily. There could be a battle in the future if they see that they're not getting their way, but they're waiting to get to that point where humans just drop bombs on each other and start to slowly destroy each other. They are introducing toxins and poisons into our system, into our atmosphere, as well as into our food. There's this introduction of slow, a process of elimination of humans. Now, that I know comes at a very, it can be looked at as a negative way. But here's the thing about the universe and about consciousness. There are multiple realities that can exist at the same time. That quantum physics shows that there are many different timelines that you can enter into. Okay, and it's about your perception, it's about your reality. So I am telling you all this, I guess, just to give clarity to those that are like, what is going on Earth? Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And part of the reason why these beings have been on Earth for so long is because people didn't have knowledge of them. But now it's going to start coming out. And because knowledge is power, they will start to see that they can no longer control humans, and they cannot manipulate them, and they don't want to destroy their last remaining species. They are not going to start wars and kill themselves off. They are way too proud of a species, of a reptilian type nature, way too proud to destroy themselves in a war on Earth. They'll just take their ships and go somewhere else, and they will go to another planet full of other species that can be as naive and unawakened to their presence. But because humans are awakening to their presence, this is what the third eye is all about. And it can be scary at first because you're like, wow, there's both good, there's bad, there's a lot of things that we're not taught in school that's on this earth. And so that is the third eye. And it can be shocking to people when they start to open it and have that moment of realization that Earth is not exactly the way that, like I said, you're taught in school, or on a surface level of how it seems. That there's so much other things that are happening. So I give you that news right now. If any kind of, and it's not all reptilians, it's not, but if any type of people that feel like they are connected to the reptilians, just be aware of that there is a way to manipulate. And there are some reptilians that have basically chosen to be kind of spies in a way, and so they help humanity at the same time, but it's not the majority at all. And the majority of them are waiting to see if humans kill themselves off and destroy themselves, and they're way too proud of a species to even start anything with humans. They will not confront them. The only way that they would confront them is if, I guess, they get to a point where they really want this earth and they're not getting their way. If something changes in them where they're like, no, we're not going to go to another planet, we're going to fight for this one, that would be the only way. But the fairy energy is coming in to battle that, because when more humans connect to nature, it opens their eyes to the technology, to the manipulation of wars and things that are going on. And then people start speaking about it, and they start to change their lifestyle, and they start to together we actually create the collective. So reptilians and negative grays, they exist because of the lack of awareness of them. They have existed here because of the lack of awareness. But as soon as humans become more aware of their presence, then they will not be a hidden threat, a shadow government any longer. They will not, because that's the thing, is that the fairy energy is very strong in shifting the vibrations. So your reality will change. They will not be part of that timeline in humanity. And we will enter a new earth without them, free from their manipulation, completely liberated in that way. So that's why the fairy energy is very important, because it quite literally gives you fairy wings and raises your vibration. And some people may think, oh, this positive stuff and all that is just, it's not going to help you. The truth is that positivity in thoughts and emotions and experiences is a very fast vibration of energy, and it will absolutely help you. But here's the thing. It's hard to come to that energy if you have not already worked on yourself, healing yourself from your experiences, your traumas, and your events in life. So if you come to my channel and you're like, wow, why can't I feel this? Look into, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid at all. Look into your past in terms of your childhood, even just a few years ago, even, and just try to figure out, what is it that keeps you vibrationally down still? Is it that somebody hurt you, and so you're subconsciously playing this, victim role? Is there anger in you that you have not let go? I can help with releasing anger, because when you teach about higher consciousness and the differences, you can start to release anger within you, because you'll start to take on the patience of the elves of Tolkien, because the patience is so important. It's about understanding where people are at and how they will not be able to treat you in the same way that you would want to be treated. And they will not treat you in the same way that you treat others, because they're just not there at that moment in time in their spiritual development. Having that knowledge releases anger. How can you be mad how can you be angry, really, logically, at somebody who doesn't know any better or is not having that in their experience? You can't. It's like teaching. You cannot be mad at children because they don't know what 2 plus 2 is. You can't get mad at them because they just haven't learned yet. So that is how you release anger from abuse in your childhood. That is how you release anger through abuse from just your spouses or your partners that you have partnered with, and they have been very hurt people themselves, and they have hurt you in return. You release your anger finally by understanding where they're at. And then you're just like, they don't know any better. I cannot be mad at them. But you certainly don't have to stay with them then. Then you can make the choice to be happy, finally, to move on to those that are at more your level, so that you can have a joyful shared experience with those that really appreciate you, can understand you, and can give you back what you give to others. This is extremely important. Once you work on healing yourself from any past traumas, then you can start to employ the light worker idea, or the positive law of attraction idea. Not law of attraction like I'm thinking of a check of $1 million and I'm going to go check my mailbox. No, not in this 3D Earth. No, that's not how. You got to work. You have to work on Earth, because that's part of the experience. It's a struggle. It's a toil, because it's part of that experience. It's also part of the joy of working hard for something that you're trying to earn. So there's a joy to it as well. Many of us fairy souls, elf souls, we get to Earth and we're like, why do I have to work? Like, what is this? I shouldn't have to work. I should just have this. You have to understand it's a different set of laws of physics here. You have to physically work at something. You cannot just manifest it from your mind. It's about your mind, then your hands, then your body gets in the car, gets the materials, starts to build it, and then you have your invention or your product you want to sell. You do not have the same laws of physics here, where in fairyland it's different. You can think of something and it just appears in your reality because it's a light body experience. You do not have to work for you. Okay, so if a fairy wants something in fairyland, it would be like, okay, so I want this tree house with magnificent lights. They would not have to, unless they wanted the experience of it, they would not have to cut down, wood. They wouldn't have to build it. It would start to manifest right before their eyes. It would just manifest just as we would think. It's incredible. And the Pleiadians talk about this with Billy Meyer in 1975. That's why the Pleiadians are very connected to this fairy energy, this high vibrational essence, to be able to manipulate time and matter in this way. They will not have to go through the actual construction of things. It's a mind, an instant, what Tolkien was talking about. Elves have this instant mind connection. Their thoughts produce a very fast and quick vision and a reality right before them. And that's the power of the elves and the fairies. When you come here to Earth, it might not be like that at first, but what will happen, if you are aware of it, what will happen is everything takes time on the 3D Earth. It's slower. It's a slower dimension. But when you start to raise your vibration, so when you put past the Earth drama and you think about the beauty of the universe, the beauty of nature, the beauty of animals, and you stop focusing so much on the wars and people are terrible to each other and killing each other and putting puppies in microwaves. I cannot believe sometimes those news articles. I'm like, I can't fathom it. I cannot fathom, but I can fathom it because I can understand it. I get it. However, when you focus on that, just that, you start to just kind of exist in that reality. So it's very important to be able to look at those articles. Okay. So you see the news, right? Don't avoid. You can't avoid. You cannot like stop watching the news because then you'll start to feel this imbalance within you. You're lost on Earth. You are in fairyland and you're like, I feel so ungrounded. There's a part of you that needs to have that grounding on Earth. So you still have to be aware of what's happening in the world, but you also have to have this ability to shift yourself out of it and remind yourself of joyful things, fairy tales, and watching movies that make you laugh, and Lord of the Rings, and stories about where the good triumphs over evil. This is extremely important. These are not frivolous things. They actually elevate your vibration to a higher level. And that is where your reality will be perceived, and it will be a different reality. And this is how you get over earthly traumas and things like that. And you move on to a newer experience until you die, until you leave this planet and transition to something else. And that is available to those that are seeking that experience on life, in life on Earth. So I hope that this gave more clarity and understanding about the fairies. That the fairies are very much star beings as well as they were on Earth at one point. There are some that have still remained. In the Nordic countries, there are elves that still live around the mounds in Iceland, and so remember what I said about the Pleiadian, the sister Electra, how there was this very strange, I guess, legend about in ancient Greece about how Electra took off and went to the Arctic Circle. So the whole concept of Norwegian countries, like that Scandinavian, Santa's elves, all of that is because that collective stayed in that area, the ones that chose to stay on Earth. The ones that chose to leave and become light bodies, they went towards the Pleiades and Andromeda and other places. And so this was their choice. And so this is why we have an element of fairies and elves that kind of exist still in like the Europe area, but they also can exist other places. Of course, I mean, fairies are individuals. They are not robots. They are not hive minds at all. They do what they want and what they please as an individual mind, as an individual soul, moving around as a free spirit, as a free spirit. They are not bound to rules and laws of each other. However, they do follow certain laws because it just aligns to their higher vibration within themselves. So they don't pass through those laws. So I wanted to read you this. There are ways of getting in touch with the fairy energy. There's tools for it. And I wanted to kind of read you a story here. So this is I love this book. This is from my childhood, Elves and Fairies. And this gives you all like poems and old stories and legends about fairies and elves and gnomes. And this one is Pipes and Drums by Lillian Holmes. A little pixie piper went a-piping through the glens. Some folks who heard him thought his notes, a robin's or a wren's. How late to hear a robin sing? It must be nearly 10. The pixie piper chuckled and went piping down the glen. It wasn't quite a robin's note. I fancy 'twas a wren. And the pixie piper chuckled and went piping down the glen. If we'd been there we might have made the same mistake ourselves. The only folks who knew the truth were goblins, gnomes, and elves. The idea that humans may hear an animal call and they just are like, oh, that's just a bird. But the fairy, the elemental spirit, that energy, and if you have this within you as a consciousness block that you carry, you'll know the difference between a robin or a wren's call, because it's about looking deeper into nature, and respecting all aspects of it. And so the more that you connect to nature, and an idea of like researching about plants and different animals, and how do you care better for nature, how do you care better for animals, you are actually harnessing that fairy energy, that elemental energy within you, that is all about knowing exactly the specific needs of a plant, a flower, a tree, an animal, because they're all so different. There are some humans that are just like, a dog is just a dog. But then there are some humans that are like, no, this particular breed needs this. And this, it's different. So fairy energy helps us go deeper into nature and get more into the idea of the variety of nature. And we can explore this vast world of nature through the fairy energy, because a wren's note sounds different to our ears than a robin's note. And wouldn't that be beautiful to hear the difference? Because if you heard only just, if all birds sounded the same on Earth, then it's not as joyful of an experience. It's like, oh, it's just the same bird over and over and over. But when you hear a robin's call and a wren's call, there's difference in notes, there's difference in a sound. And that's lovely. That is a difference that you can experience. And variety is a type of joy. I have awakened to this myself. Variety of races and cultures and things like that can provide a very joyful experience. The problem is when those differences become so ingrained in people that they become obstacles, and they become walls between each other and borders between each other. But the variety is a real joy. And so the grays and even the reptilians and those beings, when you're all like one of each other and there's no variety anymore, you deplete the joyful experience of life. You could still live, but there's a type of, you know how it is. If any of you have ever suffered depression, your world looks differently. It's hard to feel joy in that moment. And you can brush your teeth, you can go to your work, you could do those things, although sometimes it can be very hard. But there's a lack of joy. There's actually a lack of this fun within you. And that is something that happens when you lose variety. Variety is the spark of this universe. It's the spark of light. It's so important to have variety. And nature can actually show us that with all the variety of flora and fauna that we have on Earth. And when we pay more attention to each plant in their particular needs, each animal in their particular needs, each tree, all of that, we actually start to tap into this ability to have more of a joyful experience on Earth together. Because it's like your consciousness expands even more. And when your consciousness expands even more, you're opening up doorways to other things that you haven't seen before. It's like Bilbo going on a new adventure. It's that exciting when you expand your consciousness. And so humans can do that as they get more and more in touch with nature through harnessing the fairy energy. Harnessing the fairy energy is about getting in tune with the differences of nature, the differences of the elemental beings in nature, the spirits, the energies, and just really having fun with it. I want to encourage my followers and my subscribers, have fun. Pick up a book on plants and flowers and herbology and have fun. And maybe do bird watching. There's a type of experience that you can have and you can add it to your life right now that will just open up this portal of fairy energy and elf energy within you. The elves of Tolkien were like this in that they knew exactly what the different plants were. And I will definitely do a video on a book because Tolkien had this fairy energy within him. This is why he could write the way he did. He contained a consciousness block of the fairy elemental energy. It could be very much Pleiadian. It could be from somewhere else, but he contained that fairy energy. So he has a book. Well, no, he doesn't have a book, but someone wrote a book about gathering all the different plants and the flowers and the flora and the fauna that you see in Lord of the Rings, in the books, as well as in his other stories, and gathering that together and showing all the different plants of Middle Earth and the animals of Middle Earth. And I will do a video on that because it's very exciting to learn about the different ones. And the elves were the beings that could teach the humans the differences between plants. So that Aragorn, who was raised in Rivendell and who had a tiny bit of elven DNA in him, he could say, oh, Athalas. Athalas is a plant that will heal wounds. He knows that knowledge because elves taught him that. That's what elves do. They carry the ability to go deeper into nature. And so when you can unlock that within yourself, you are living very much like an elf or fairy on Earth. You are a fairy and an elf on Earth. You are. You just can't fly. Maybe you won't have pointy ears. You're not going to be the stereotypical idea of what an elf is, but you will contain that essence, that consciousness block within you. You will be that. You will be that. And something will happen the more that you tap into this fairy elf energy within you. People will start recognizing it within you. There will be more joy in your life because this is what your soul is aligned to. Let me say this. And I have that video about souls. Souls are not all the same. We come from a prime source of oneness, but we vibrate at different frequencies and vibrations, and we have different notes to us. I mean, it's about string theory now and quantum mechanics. We have different notes to us. We have different molecule compositions. It's very interesting to see that variety that exists in all souls from this prime source. So what happens is that a soul that contains the fairy elemental energy within them, it's because you're vibrating at that certain, basically you come into the world vibrating with that everything that vibrates on that same level will touch your heart. So here's the answer to, is everything in my reality me? Well, here's the thing. Not everything in your reality resonates with you, and you will not vibrate with everything in your reality. What moves you, what touches your heart, what you feel a kinship to, a connection, a familiarity, a like that you go out and buy that. You want that style. You want to surround yourself with it. These things on earth that you love and enjoy, that's part of you. That's your special, unique vibration. That's a mirror to you to show you who you are in this variety of a collective. Everybody has many different interests and likes, and that's what makes this world so amazing. The wonderful thing about the fairy energy is that I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're the only type of beings in the multiverse, probably not, but in the universe that symbolize this ability. But fairies have this ability to see something different than them and like laugh at it and like have joy about it. They don't get into fights about that differences. Like the differences do not offend them. Whereas there are some people that they'll see a difference in something that's not their vibration, and they're like, I'm going to fight that. I don't want it in my experience. A fairy elf energy does not fight differences. They are liberal in a lot of ways. It's not connected so much to politics, but perhaps it is. They're liberal. They're they are very much like live and let be, and nothing offends them. Nothing offends them unless it's harmful, it hurts animals, it hurts the earth, and it's harmful to other beings. And it's just like someone's acting really stupid and not their best selves. That's something that can offend a fairy or an elf soul on earth. But a fairy and an elf soul is very, very open-minded, very much, because they can allow that difference to exist in others, and it doesn't offend them, and they don't want to fight it, and they don't want to get rid of it in their experience. They're like, I welcome this difference, it's fun. Hey, you're very different. Like, my husband wants to be a cyborg. I'm like, okay, well, that's funny. It's very different from me. I love that in my experience. It's funny. So I'm just giving more clarity on this elemental soul that you can touch into. I hope that I can become, I want to take over where Doreen Virtue left off in the idea of the elemental spirits. And I'll do a video on Doreen Virtue because she was starting to tap into this energy. Doreen Virtue is very interesting because she opened herself up to being an empath and reading like the collective energies and understanding the patterns in humans and understanding the patterns of beings in galactic, our galactic neighbors. But then she kind of closed herself off to it. So she didn't get as deep as I would like to on my channel. We're going to swim in the deep ocean of fairy energy, of elf energy, of all of that. And that will be my channel. And I'm very excited to do this because I was born to do this. And I know that there are many souls out there that have been hiding this aspect of themselves because it's considered childish. It's considered not logical. It's considered part of fantasy only. You hide it. You hide it because you don't want to be seen as a fool. Because fairies are intelligent. We are very intelligent because we know the variety of different, natural elements. There's an intelligence there. Maybe we're not into the same things that others are, like, bookkeeping and finances and things like that. But perhaps we are, depends on your composition of fairy energy. But the thing is that we are going to be interested in things that vibrate to our soul. But it's offensive to some, or it's scary to some, or they think it's silly. So you hide that aspect of yourself. I guess I am going to help people pull that out more and be okay to express it, because it's time. Earth needs fairy and elves and gnomes and dwarves and all of these elemental souls to come back to Earth again in order to save humanity from itself, in order to liberate humanity many ways and create a timeline that exists that is a very positive and bright, beautiful future for humans. And that is I think that's something that's going to happen on my channel, is I'm just going to go deeper into the idea of what Doreen Virtue was trying to do, and then she shut herself off from it. So I'm excited to do that. And I just want people to feel comfortable to show this side of themselves. And it might be a subtle movement, you know, because a lot of people are going to make fun of you. They're going to laugh at you. I went on Good Morning Britain and basically, you know, got laughed at. And it's because people don't understand this yet, but they will, you know, the more people that do this, the more they will understand where the folk tales and legends came from. Well, they're stories that came from real life experiences, not just the imagination. There are some stories that came just from the imagination, but there are also stories that come from real life encounters with fairies and elves and gnomes and dwarves and all of that back in a time when they could still be seen by others before they moved on. So there is going to be a lot to talk about. I'm really excited to take this journey with those that resonate in this way and help you feel more comfortable showing your fairy nature. Both men, women, non-binary, anybody who feels in a way. I don't like that term non-binary. I know I said this before in a video, and I took it down because I was like, I'm not going to bring a confrontational thing right now. I don't want to deal with it. But here's the thing. I don't like the word non-binary. I like androgynous. It's more fairy kind of directed. Non-binary, binary, that word is like, it's just so encoded in technology. So that's why I'm just trying to not use that word. But I understand if you identify as that and it helps, you know, communicate the information of what's out there, I get it. I'm not judging that at all in any way, shape, or form. It's just that you might not hear me talk about that as much. So I truly, yes, I truly do want to do that on my channel and go more into that. Let me show you really quickly some tools that the Electra Pleiadians, when they came through me. So how channeling works is that we are multi-dimensional beings, okay? We experience ourselves as certain identities and certain egos for just one lifetime to have that experience. There's an aspect of all of us, though, that is multi-dimensional. And you can tap into all of the possible realities that could exist. You can tap into that when you want to open yourself up to that. Now, I have opened myself up. I was born basically to experience my life in that way. But I decided to become like a helper on Earth. So I opened myself up to channeling. And channeling is about allowing the collective consciousness block that comes from certain beings that you are connecting to come through you. So it's not necessarily your identity or ego, but it's a small maybe aspect of you. It can exist in another reality. And you're actually tapping into the you're basically tapping into the prime source, like the Akashic records, the sky records of everything. and you bring that information down into you and you feel it as truth and clarity. Like you finally remember things because you're tapping into a consciousness block that's outside of the ego self, that's more connected to the prime source, but it's attached to the mind of Eru. For those who watch my video, the idea of it's attached to the prime source. Like if the Akashic Records was like a library, what it would do is it would go through the file. So when you want to channel, you go through basically like the infinite files that are stored in the Akashic Record library, and you go to the collective beings that you are accessing. And if you are truly open to that, and you are in a place where you can let go of your own ego, and you want to help the world, and you want to kind of like assist others in tapping into that higher dimension, you pull that library file into you, and then you start to be able to read basically the collective energies and whatever is in that file, like all of the knowledge, the energies, the wars, the learnings, the wisdoms that went through that file, everything, all that is stored, and you get that. It's very hard to sometimes verbalize everything that comes through you as channeler, but if you write, that helps because you're letting it come out. Yesterday was very interesting because normally I write. I'm a spirit writer. Yesterday was very different. Yesterday was the idea of that I was not meditating. I was not sitting down at my computer. I was not sitting down to write out my thoughts of higher dimensions and consciousness. I was tapping into Akashic Records. Whenever I channel, I tap into those files and I pull them down into me and I write about it. I was not doing that. I was literally just hanging out at my house, and all of a sudden a very joyful, gleeful energy came buzzing through, but it was centered. It was centered because the one that was doing the most speaking was like the council of fairies, like the leader of them in that idea of like they help to calm the fairies down, soothe the fairies, and they're like the calm aspect of fairyland. So that was the first voice that came through, but the other beings were surrounded that person, that being. And so they wanted to pipe in. And that's why I added like special effects, because I'm trying to visually and audibly bring my visions to life for people to see, so that you could see what I am seeing. So you can understand, basically everything that maybe you have been feeling is happening, and I'm just kind of affirming that. But that was a very different day yesterday. And I believe it's because weed has been legalized in many states, and 2020 is going to be a new year of many different energies. And so I believe that the fairies came in really fast into me because it was part of the shift over from 2019 into 2020, which is a very big shift in a lot of ways. And every year really is. There's something about 2020. There's just something. It's like a benchmark that humans have reached. So it was very exciting to get that type of energy within me, because I have not been feeling that energy for a while. I mean, I'm an elf soul. I have a little bit of a fairyness to me as well, and I am like fairy with wings. But I have forgotten how to sometimes laugh and have fun and just have joy at times. Like there's moments and glimmers of my joy, but because Earth is really dense and it doesn't accept fairy souls, it's been really hard for me. Getting mocked in front of public eye is difficult to take to a soul. I will never make fun of a celebrity and online or anything, because that celebrity will hear that remark. And I am not a celebrity, but I went on to Great Britain's television show. Millions have seen me, and I got mocked for it, and it was extremely hard, really, really difficult. So for a while, you had a very depressed elf on Earth, which is like thunder and lightning, let me tell you, very angry. There's an elemental part of fairies that is destructive. It's nature in its most destructive forces. It's very powerful. And that was raging storms inside of me, and also very much sadness. It was a mix. I was like a hurricane, and also like kind of a gloomy thunderstorm sometimes. Yeah. And also an avalanche inside too. Elementals have that duality. If you are a fairy soul, I want you to be okay with that. Gladriel. Yes, exactly. Tolkien was tapping into that. There's the destructive force of nature, and there is the very pure, innocent force of nature that's just a natural, organic thing and a cycle. But there's a destructive force of nature that wants to destroy everything in its path, because it's time for something new. And that's why nature destroys things on Earth. It's time for something new. But there's this, when you're a fairy or elf soul on Earth, and you have that aspect to you, you have a very strong destructive part of you. It's an aspect of your shadow self. And that's just something you have to learn how to control. You have to absolutely learn how to control it, because it can get out of control. You can get very angry and yeah, very destructive in the idea of like self-sabotage yourself, destructive on yourself, cutting, depressive states that are just very destructive, self-destructive, like a volcano. You're basically erupting within yourself. And also it's the fire energy of air, earth, water, fire. The fire energy is a catalyst. It's passionate. It changes things, but it's destructive too. So when you keep too much fire in you, that's an imbalance. You have to find a way to soothe yourself with water energy and earth energies, and sometimes air, but air energies sometimes fans the flames, just because mentally they want to watch. It's like about stimulation of experience with water, with air energies. But water energies is more about the soothing of fire. So it's very good about that. That's the whole thing. So it was very difficult for me to come out in public and be seen that way. And so that's what I was dealing with. However, I want to encourage more people to push past that, because even though people are going to mock you, they're going to make fun of you, you might get snide remarks and giggles at the way maybe you dress, the way that you look, the way that you maybe act, the things that you're into. Why are you studying a book about plants so much? Like, why are you bird watching? You are a nerd. These types of things, like stop playing fantasy games, get out of Lord of the Rings. You have to ignore those comments and push ahead. You have to. It's important for your soul, your destiny, which is basically what you have designed, but you forgot what you want to achieve in one lifetime. That's what your destiny is. And when you start to do things that are truthful and authentic to yourself, you walk towards this path of destiny. And then you start feeling this absolute joy in your heart. It's like you align to it. So you just have to push aside the comments. And, I went to a party and it was an experience because there were so many different souls. And I started talking about things that I normally wouldn't feel comfortable with. And even though, like, I had the most remarkable conversation with this man that he runs like an energy company. And I was talking to him, I was like, green energy? He was like, yeah, that's a possibility, but people are not ready for it yet. And I was like, okay, so it's a future idea? And he's like, yes, yes. So I was talking to him about green energy. And it kind of came out like what I do on YouTube, because that just came out. I don't tell people that often. I like to stay hidden in Illinois. I wanted to, keep my identity to myself, I guess, in Chicago, but I guess, sometimes it has to come out. But I had a really great conversation with him. He is not really a fairy elf soul, but he appreciates nature. He appreciates elves and fairies. So there was this, like, not an over enthusiastic type of embrace about me, but he was just like, that's cool. I like that. So know this, that as the more that you come out and feel more confident to show yourself, you may meet others that are not into the same things, but they're like, hey, that's interesting, that's cool, and it's good because once again, it's like that variety. So they're open-minded too, but in a different way, maybe not in a fairy way. So don't be afraid to show yourself and come out more. Other tools I wanted to talk about, because I went on a tangent with that, is the idea that you can use certain tools to help you. Crystals, I will go into this more in a video about crystals. Crystals amplify energy. Because we are multidimensional beings, we can have access to multi-dimensions at our hands or in our minds when we want to access them. There are certain crystals that vibrate with certain frequencies that will tap into the files of the Akashic records. And then it amplifies the energy within you so that you start to feel more those energies that are attributed to those certain, the things, the collective archetypes or the ideas that are aligned to what you're trying to tap into. And crystals are connected to that, but I'll get more into it. So there's 3 crystals I was told by the Electra Pleiadians that you can get in touch with that will help to open this and amplify when you use it in meditation, in jewelry. It's called spirit quartz. Can you see? So spirit quartz it's either called fairy quartz or spirit quartz. It's actual quartz crystal with little flakes inside of it. Some people might think that it's not as pure as quartz, but it's just the way that the crystalline structure created itself. Because of the way that you could see the flakes in it, very, very soft, and it's hard to see, but it's just kind of like floating in there. That's the fairy energy. Hard to see, but floating everywhere if you want to tap into it. Spirit quartz, fairy quartz will help you. Have that in your home. Hold it when you meditate. You could wear it as jewelry. It can be rare because it's about the inclusions inside of the crystal that create the little fluttery things in there. The other, not a crystal, but it's a meteorite, is Moldavite. Moldavite, if I take this light, oh my gosh, that's way too bright. Do you see that? So Moldavite has this like moss green quality to it. It looks forest green, and then when you put light, it's actually a very light green. This came from a meteorite that is only basically in, I believe it's in Russia. Only that place, that meteorite fell. So you can only find Moldavite in Russia. Tikite is another word for it too. And this energy is very high dimensional. Yes, and I do want to say Pleiadian 777 Viking, who's right now on chat, he has an Etsy store. He's from the UK. He has an Etsy store, and he gave me this. So thank you so much. You must have tapped into that energy and was like, she needs some Moldavite now. This particular crystal will elevate because it amplifies this like outer worldly, because it came from a meteorite. It brings that otherworldly aspect to yourself. So when you wear it in jewelry or have it in your home, it amplifies those particular energies within you. So Moldavite is very good for the fairy energy and to harness that. Also, aqua aura crystal. I do not have it, but I have a picture of it. I'm going to get some because I need that in my life. This crystal, aqua aura, beautiful. This crystal is very light blue, but it shines in different iridescent colors. There's like purple and pink and purple and green. It's iridescent. Fairy wings always kind of shimmer like iridescence, and that's because it's about the aura of the chakras. That is basically all the colors of the rainbow. It's all alignment of all the chakras. It's complete balance of all chakras, all lifetimes, all experiences. And the fairy wings are iridescent because they represent all of the colors of the chakra and the human consciousness. Iridescent colors in crystals will definitely help to amplify that. It's like a mind vision reminder. So those that are very like, I have met you, I love you. There's many of you that are into light purples and pinks and blues, and your Instagram page is like all iridescent colors, and I absolutely love that. That's an aspect of me. And so I know that is because you're vibrating on that very high fairy dimensional energy of these wings that are all colors of the chakra and all colors of the rainbow, the light spectrum, all colors of the light spectrum. So aqua aura crystal and titanium crystal too. It's like a darker blue with colors like that. That is also an amplifier as well. So definitely get a hold of those 3 crystals. If you would like to work on bringing out more of that fairy energy, these are just amplifiers. Crystals do nothing else except amplify the energy already within yourself that you have access to. And if you seek out for it, to utilize the energy within yourself, you can bring that forward to the surface and it will help you in life. The other thing too is, so this was a very interesting thing. I was like, I love stained glass. I love Tiffany stained glass windows. There is something so remarkably beautiful about homes that have stained glass windows. That is an element of fantasy that you are including in your home, in architecture, in structures of buildings. So I purchased on eBay for like $20 a Tiffany. This is like a Tiffany company, stained glass of a beautiful scene of waterfalls. See it? Waterfalls and also flowers and lotus blossoms. Gorgeous. So this is like my nymph side coming out here, my Pleiades nymph. And so stained glass. stained glass art, stained glass windows in your home, even looking at pictures of stained glass, going to a museum and looking at art of stained glass. This will bring you into that vibration of the fairy energy, which is really interesting. I thought that was very neat to come through. I was being kind of confirmed about that with the Electra Pleiadians because it's all about light. The star Electra, in its Greek meaning, means bright. It's one of the sisters that was the bright one, light. So anything that has to do with the light and iridescence and brightness and beauty and art, these are the fairy energies that come through. And it comes through in masculine forms as well as feminine forms. But it's about brightness. It's about brightness. And that's really how you help to elevate yourself, is by focusing on things that bring light to your heart, light to your mind, which is really your, the heart. It's all connected, but it's your consciousness, light to the consciousness. This is why I have the theory about when you heal yourself through your past traumas and all of that, you will start to tap into this very joyful energy. It's happened to me, and I think it's going to start happening to many others, and it might have even happened to a lot of you. So I will include Siren of the Void. I will include the shop name of the Moldavite store for you, because it is very rare, and it's hard to find. I mean, there are some stores, I think, that sell it, but that you can find in the US, but his particular ones, and just because of who he is, somebody that vibrates, and he's been with this channel from like the start. So he's a Pleiadian starseed fairy soul in a masculine form, and he opened up a shop of Moldavite. And so I would very highly recommend it coming from his store, just because the energy surrounding it, and he also picks good pieces that, just are, I guess, the ones that can really amplify that energy. Another tool to use is tarot cards. Now, not all tarot cards. No. And actually, these are not really tarot cards as much as they're more like inspirational art cards, which is starting to pop up a lot in metaphysical and like new age spirituality. I want to show you this Magical Dimensions of Light Star. She is a YouTuber, and I bought this because I use it on my healing sessions that I do with people. If I sense a fairy energy within you, or if I feel like you need some fairy energy, then I will pull out one of these inspirational cards. And these cards are, what is it exactly saying here? Let me see. These cards are basically cards about the other dimension of fairy. I mean, they just tap into that energy so well. They're really beautiful, inspiring, bright colors. Anybody who just needs an uplift every day as a fairy soul, it's a wonderful way of just reminding yourself of an aspect of yourself that maybe you've hidden and maybe you haven't seen in a while, because maybe some terrible things have happened to you and you've been mad about it and sad about it, and you forget your authentic nature within, you forget your soul within. So it's important to have reminders. I call them like keys. They're scattered all over to remind you of yourself when you get lost, when you get very lost inside and you forget what you were supposed to do. In a way, it's like, I mean, let's be honest, everything moves naturally on its own and moves towards its destiny on its own. But there's a type of experience that you can have where you're wandering around, taking a long, long time to find what brings you joy. It's disheartening, and it's hard, and it makes you feel like this world is a prison and you're trapped inside. and you hate your life and you hate everybody and you just should go eat worms because nobody loves you and you're terrible. There's a certain type of mentality that people can get into when they forget what it was that they were supposed to do with their unique soul on earth. This is when you lose sight of that. If you don't want to have that experience of wandering around, not all who wander are lost. Not at all. I wandered for many years. I was not lost. I was making my way to this point. But when you get to a point of awareness within you and you're like, I want to snap out of this, I don't want to be in this anymore, then there are tools, there are keys. There's something very beautiful about this universe, about all of us, is that we cannot fail. We can never fail. It's like, even if somebody is not seeking, even if somebody is never ever interested in or never even looking for their authentic soul, there are glimmers of it scattered in the world that will just kind of remind you, regardless if you're ready or not. It's like it's there as like a safety, like a safety key, I guess. And that has to do with the love and the purity of source that we all stem from. It's not us individually, it's us collectively. And let me tell you, it is a loving, pure source of goodness to the highest possible imagination, because it's life itself, it's creation itself. That's us. That's us at the very core. And a lot of us have just forgotten. And so we have this pure source that we come from, putting hints in the world for us to meet so that we can have some kind of awakening when we get too lost. It is very loving, very caring. It is the collective. It's what we come from. So when you love the source, the prime source, Eru Ilúvatar of Tolkien's stories, you are loving yourself, you're loving others, you're loving the world, everything that's created. But here's the thing, you're not loving your ego self. You're not, it's not like self-worship at all. It's like loving a power that's outside of yourself, but that you're connected to. It's absolutely beautiful. There's a difference between self-worship and understanding that you can love yourself as well as loving others and loving the universe as one. There's a difference. Self-worship kind of leads down more of a darker path. When people start to self-worship, they become like Melkors, and they start to want to control others and become tyrants over others with their visions, because they believe that they are God and everybody else has to fall in line with their vision of the world. So it's not about self-worship. It is about building harmony and recognizing this prime source within everyone. And so that is, I think that's all I wanted to say. I have so many questions here. Let me see. Is this too long? Oh man. Well, thank you for joining in. There are a lot of questions. If you can email me too, I will help you if I can get to that. Because here's the thing with me is I will always answer sincere questions in emails, but I can also read energies when people are just kind of messing with me. But I'm also very busy, not always online. I'm also offline. So if I don't get to your email, it's because I didn't see it yet. And that's really what it is. If you know in your heart that you sincerely tried to connect to me and you really have a question because you want some clarification, absolutely, I will answer your emails. I promise. Eventually I will get to it. People know that because I've gotten back to them like 2-3 weeks later, maybe a couple months later, but it happens. I do get back to them. I'm going to try not to be that late because I know how it is when you have you want clarification. It's important to have it, at a certain time, but I will try my best always. Okay, so I see a lot of you have resonated with the idea of like the different pathways with, are we going to go towards technology and forget nature completely? And then what would that look like as a civilization? And that is scary for a lot of us that love nature so much and recognize the importance of it. And also it's an ecosystem, so it keeps us healthy. It keeps our bodies, basically moving and growing. Nature helps humans evolve. That's why the story is that the amoebas and all of the molecules that started off life formed in water. Nature is a cultivator of humans. So when you destroy nature, you no longer evolve. You're stuck. You're stuck in your form. But when you have nature, you start to evolve because nature will start to mold you and evolve the human species. And that's why I do believe that humans can evolve into elf-like beings, more so in the idea that nature will evolve them. It will transform them over time. And then they will exist in that timeline in which they align to the beings like Pleiadians and even the Syrians, and those that we recognize as elven beings. Yes, definitely. Humans can go that path. I like this. Okay, so Jonathan Melton, about Tolkien. So one thing I want to say about Tolkien is the reason why I use him on my channel is because he is a fairy soul. So he was the one that was really tapped into this energy of like hobbits and even the fairies that existed in Valinor before, the elves, and then the elves. He was tapped into this very truthful energy of the fairies. And it's because it was an aspect of himself that he was able to channel, harness, pull in from his past lives and things like that. So that's really why I reference Tolkien, because as a teacher, I've learned that you have to connect ideas in that way. And Tolkien has already that ability to connect humans to the fairy energy. So I'm just supporting my theories with him. The elven spiritual path will support their spiritual understandings with Tolkien's fairy energy and understandings. It's like he is like basically a support system, basically, to harness this energy more into Earth now. So I hope I just hope that made sense. Oh, I am so sorry. My mind is not able to go through all of this online right now because there's a lot. But there was a question about Larimar stones. So yes, aquamarine stones, absolutely. Yes, aquamarine emerald stones, absolutely. The elf stone in Tolkien's story, and I'll do a video just on that, maybe alone, was a beryl. And a beryl comes in a form of emerald or aquamarine. My birthstone's aquamarine, so I always really was connected to that stone, or that. Yeah, so I feel like beryl also is as well. I just had those 3 in mind, but absolutely. What I want to say is that this is the very first video about this, but it's going to evolve deeper. Like I said, I'm going to go deeper into this exploration with those that want to go on this journey. You want to enter the portal of fairyland, then absolutely come with me. And so we will explore that together more. But I'm going to do a video on Beryl, because Tolkien said that that was the elf stone, and that was one of the stones that he spoke about in specific terms. And I really think that he was connecting that to the elven energy of fairyland. So the ones that I connected you today with is more fairies and gnomes, more of the lower level. Okay, so there's no such thing as lower in terms of hierarchy in fairyland. Everyone's equal, but there's a type of there's an age to them. There's something about their experience. So the crystals that I tapped you into, like the spirit quartz and all that, this is going to be very vibrational, very fun and vibrant, full of energy to just tap you into. The aqua aura crystal, that is the fairy energy that's just going to amplify that in your life if you need that. But the beryl, I believe, is more the elven energy that's going to, like aquamarine actually is a very calming stone. Emerald is a very calming stone. So there's crystals that are attached to those beings, and then they have a different type of frequency to them that will calm you, and it will amplify the energies of wisdom, grace, age, calmness within, and not so vibrant as the fairy energy. But I was told, I guess, because the Electra Pleiadian Fairies are more like that, and in terms of they want to infuse this more vibrant energy right now. But yes, we'll definitely get into aquamarine and emerald. That'll be fun. And then Lily Love, I feel connected to Syrian, Lyran, and Pleiades. Yeah, so you can watch my video on the idea of the human origins and all of that. I have always felt connected to those as well. But Syrians are older because they're, well, the stars, the Sirius A and Sirius B, they're older than the Pleiades. And Lyra is like the oldest of the 3. And Lyra is one of the oldest in our, I guess, in our human collective. It's very, very old. It's like 800 million years old. So the idea is that Lyrans were the ancestors of Syrians and Pleiadians. So there's a connection through bloodline and ancestry. That's why you might be tapping into that at like multidimensional self, because you had a life in Lyra, Sirius, and Pleiades. There's different aspects of yourself that you're tapping into when you feel a lot of different energies. If you feel just one, that's fine too, because that just means that you're focusing on that particular one energy. I'll say I used to think that I was a lot of different things, and I still do, but I don't focus on it so much because I like to focus on one thing. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's the Virgo moon part of me, because I have my moon signs in Virgo, but there's like this element of me that wants to be very organized and focused, and that's the manager part of me too, I guess, in my other job. And I guess I just focus on just one aspect of myself. It just grounds me more. But you absolutely have many aspects of yourself. Absolutely. So yes, there's a lot to go through with this, but I am so excited. I'm really excited. When I posted that at 12 midnight, it was like I was trying to surprise people with it. And I woke up Well, I was feeling anxious about it too, because I was like, I don't know if people are ready yet to hear this or to see this aspect of reality yet. Like I just was afraid, only because I've been mocked before and ridiculed. So I was afraid how it would be taken. And I was so excited to see that there was like 47 likes and 1 dislike. And it shows that people are already resonating with that energy. It's coming into their life and it's trying to come in more. Let me tell you, if you feel like, oh, I'm just not really there, it's going to start, but it's about your focus. Consciousness works like a camera, in the idea that what you focus on, it starts to appear in your reality. You start to observe it more. And it's not about blinding yourself off to everything. Focus is different than observing. Focus is about honing into something and wanting to know every aspect of it, like really getting into the depths and the details of something that you're focused on, so that you can only have your thoughts just focused on that one thing. But observing, like the elves do of Tolkien, you can have this multidimensional aspect of you that is an observer, where you can observe everything that's going on in the world, and it doesn't affect you because you're focused on happiness and bliss and inner peace. It doesn't mean that you're not seen. You absolutely are. But you are focused on having a happy experience and a life with others. And this is why some people have said, oh, some light workers are blind to what's going on in the world. Oh, we're not blind. We're not blind. We see it very much. And I do take on a balanced approach, because I try to show that I am a light worker too, but I'm also seeing this going on in the world. It's not okay. That's not okay. But I am trying to show that aspect of the idea that you can see the evil, bad things going on in the world, understand where it comes from, choose not to delve too deep into it. It's like that famous quote of the occult, like, when you stare into the abyss stares back at you. So I'm very interested in the occult. I've always been very interested in like secret societies and things like that, but I do not study it. There's a difference. I'm interested in learning about dark magic and how that works, looking into it. As far as like observing, I do not study it. Focus is about studying. So that's the difference between observing and focus. So whatever you decide to study in your life and focus on appears more in your reality. And the things that you just observe, they're not part of you. They're just there for you to observe the differences of what's within you compared to what's going on. Remember, the variety is what creates the experience of joy, and just experience of life. I really think it's just experience of life, because if you think about it, if consciousness was all just one thing, we wouldn't exist. This would not exist. It would be the void, a peaceful void, but there would be no fun and there would not be any experience. That's the twilight sleep. So we'll go into this more, but this was the very first kind of video about that. And then the Elven Light University will be all about how to embrace these energies and qualities within yourself and bring this out more into the future of humanity and into your own life, so that you can explore the side of you that will bring more joy, that will bring more happiness, and it can also bring solutions to the problems in this world. People can invent many things and come up with many solutions coming from a very high place of vibration and joy and friendship, and you can come up with solutions. You do not have to sit in the lower states of vibrations in order to fix problems. You can rise above them, and then you can figure out what needs to be done, but you're not part of the world. It's like what the Buddha taught if you study Buddhism and you were a Buddhist. I did. That was my very first spiritual path that awakened me. Buddha's very wise sayings and teachings was that, be part of the world, not of the world. So you're taking part in a collective and you're working in harmony with others, but you're not of what the unconscious society has created as reality. Like you can be on this planet as a starseed, as a light worker, as an earth angel, as all of that, but you don't have to be part of the mess and the drama, but you can experience it and you can observe it. But your focus and your study in your life determines how much happiness and joy that you have in your experience in your life on Earth. So that's something that I have worked on to learn and remember, because I'm somebody that really likes to look at the dark side. I really like to, because I enjoy the differences. I like that. And there's an aspect of me that's dark. Oh, yes. I have a very destructive side of me when I'm angry, very. But that's the thing, is like, I feel that I basically have learned how to control that over time. And so that side of me does not control my actions. And so that's what I want to teach about shadow work, is like, yes, as Carl Jung said, you want to be conscious of your darkness. You want to know what you're capable of doing. When you think in your mind, you're like, I could kill that person right now. It's important for you to know that you have that potential in you. It's a whole other thing to act on it. You have to then engage your logic, your love for others, the universe, your understanding on a spiritual level, and then you don't act out that thought. You don't act out that emotional response. And so that's really where I think that the elves can teach us, is this not moving from the reptilian part of the human brain. Humans were created with 3 parts of the brain: the reptilian part, the mammalian part, and the neocortex. And they operate and they control different functions of our mind. And so the elven energy, which I will do a video on. I'm like getting all these ideas now. No, I've had them, but I'm just telling you that it's coming. It's coming. If you want to know any more about it, the elven energy is the neocortex. So Tolkien was tapping into that. And I think I did a video on it, the different parts of the human, I think. Yes, I did the different parts of the human mind, like what the dwarves represent, what the orcs represent, what the wizards and what the elves represent, and what the humans represent. The different parts of the characters of Middle-earth represent the different parts of your mind. And the elves and the wizards represent the neocortex. And the neocortex is the higher mind that is connected to literature and art and using your mind to think deeper about things and using a logic within you that's not about reacting emotionally to the world. The reptilian brain is about reacting emotionally to the world. That's when someone makes you so angry and then you actually, pull out a weapon and you hurt someone. You're moving from the reptilian mind. Because if the neocortex was engaged, you would act more like the elves in Tolkien's stories, where they're always thinking about their actions before they do it. And they have foresight to see the consequences of their actions. And that's where humans are going, where they'll be able to tap into all the consequences that could arise from an action. And it will be like involuntary, where it just happens naturally. And we won't have humans striking out at each other. I mean, we might, that decide to still be on that path using the reptilian part of the brain, but those that evolve more into using and opening up the neocortex, they will become more like the elves of Tolkien. They will become, and not always in that form, but you could be like a frog being. You can evolve into other forms of humanoids, but you still would operate from the neocortex. So that's a lot of information. I'm sorry I went into that, but this is something that I guess I will get more into on other videos. So I am going to go now and let you all enjoy your New Year's Day and enjoy the new energies that are coming in, and just, just take some time. If this is information that maybe it's scary or it's unfamiliar to you, that's fine. You don't have to accept everything. It's about just being patient with yourself and just taking time and doing whatever resonates with you at this time, and taking information in that resonates with you. And that's really all I want to say, is just, have more fun this year. Like me, yes, I think fairy souls are given that permission now. Maybe that's why the energy is coming in, is like, it's to both make humans more lighthearted in nature, that identify with just being human and not a starseed. And it's also to give those that identify as a starseed permission to have fun, to not just make it their sole purpose to help others, or to worry and have concern about the earth, but it's actually now it's time for you to have fun. And you probably have glimmers of it too. But because you are so sensitive, you have that consciousness block to you. You've probably been very concerned, like me, about the earth. So it's time to kind of release that, release the worry, the crease in your brow. I have had a pain, a tightness in my heart chakra lately, like a really tight feeling, like I can't breathe. I could not deeply breathe until I got this information, because now I feel more open in my chest, but I was having a very tight feeling, and that is the heart chakra that is experiencing a pain body because of what I've experienced, what I have felt, what I've gone through, the things I'm telling myself. And it starts to take toll on your body. Heart attacks are a lot of times emotionally connected. In fact, there's a mind-body connection to everything. So it is about emotions. It's also what you eat as well. There's all that connection. So yes, let's lighten the load on planet Earth, and just have more joy in this new year and going forward. So thank you all who joined in, and I will see you all on the next video. Happy New Year.